I still remember the damp chill in the air that morning. The rain seemed to play a symphony against the window panes of our small, ivy-draped house in Bath, as if nature itself were trying to warn me. It was as if the world was holding its breath, waiting for something significant to happen. But I wasn't sure if that was a good thing or a bad thing yet. My suitcase stood neatly by the door, modest and worn, as I had packed it myself with a mix of clothes, a few old books, and the hope that somehow, someway, this was going to be my moment. Meanwhile, Oliver was standing next to his gleaming new Jaguar, looking like the picture-perfect son, the golden child. A car that cost more than I could even imagine, let alone afford. A symbol of everything my parents had hoped for him, success, privilege, and the life they had mapped out for him since the day he was born. I watched him rev the engine, his smug smile barely hiding the satisfaction he felt. It wasn't just the car. It was everything. The scholarships, the praise, the way people always looked at him as if he were the one who deserved all the glory. The way he was always their priority. It was hard to swallow, but I had to. It was his moment. It had always been his moment. I caught a glimpse of my father in the hallway, adjusting his tie in front of the mirror. "Well, don't just stand there," he said, without looking back. "You'll miss your bus." I forced myself to keep breathing, keep my composure, even though the sting of the situation burned at the back of my throat. It wasn't just a bus ticket they had handed me. It was a reminder that I was nothing more than a backup plan, a secondary character in the story of my family. It didn't matter how hard I worked, how much I achieved, it would never measure up to the shining path they'd laid out for Oliver. "Your journey will build character," Dad said, his voice detached and cold, as though he was trying to make me believe that the cramped seats of a local boss would somehow turn me into a better person. Mum, who had barely looked up from her Earl Grey, offered no protest. She never did. They were both content with their decision, content with seeing me as less than what they expected. In their eyes, I was just a passing phase, a child who didn't follow the plan. A failure, perhaps. I tried to hold my tears back, but it was hard. Oliver had already slid into the driver's seat of his car, revving the engine in a way that almost sounded like a victory celebration. I turned away from the scene, picking up my suitcase and heading for the front door. "See you later, then," I muttered, trying to keep my voice steady, my heart from racing too much. There was nothing else I could say. The disappointment in their eyes was enough. I turned around, not to look back, but to gather the last remnants of my dignity. As I stepped outside, the smell of wet pavement filled my senses. The world felt heavy, pressing down on my shoulders, but I couldn't afford to let it break me. Not yet. I hailed a taxi, paid with the money I had saved over the last few months. It wasn't much, but it would get me to the train station. The driver, a middle-aged man with a thick accent, glanced at me in the rearview mirror but didn't say anything. He didn't need to. He must have known I wasn't just another girl on her way to the station. I wasn't like them. I wasn't the daughter who played by the rules. And I wasn't going to let this moment define me. As we drove through the rain-soaked streets, the realization hit me: I wasn't going to London to beg for a place. I wasn't going to London just to follow a dream that they'd never believe in. No, I was going to London because I had earned it. Every step, every setback, had led me to this moment. The taxi stopped in front of the station, and I paid the driver, stepping out with a sense of purpose. I wasn't sure what awaited me in the city, but I was sure it was going to be something more than I'd ever gotten in Bath. More than I'd ever gotten from my family. I took out my phone and sent a quick text to Fiona. She had promised to meet me at Paddington. She had always seen something in me, even when no one else did. And now, she was offering me more than just a chance. She was offering me a life. "Fiona, change of plans. Pick you up at Paddington. Bring your best smile. We're making an entrance." The words burned in my chest. This wasn't just about getting to the city. This was about making a statement. It was about showing them all that I wasn't the afterthought, the second-rate child they'd written off. I was more than that. I was ready to carve my own path. I wasn't just going to London. I was going to make sure they never forgot who I was. The hustle and bustle of Paddington Station hit me like a wave. There were people everywhere, commuters rushing to catch their trains, tourists dragging their luggage behind them, and street vendors shouting about the latest deals. But amidst the chaos, one thing stood clear: I was no longer a girl from Bath, heading off on a lonely bus journey to an uncertain future. No, I was something different now. I was someone who had chosen to take control. Fiona's message had ignited a spark in me. She wasn't just going to pick me up in some ordinary cab. No, Fiona had other plans that would make everyone take notice. I wasn't going to slip quietly into the background. Today, I was going to make an entrance. As I stepped out onto the street outside Paddington, the roar of the city surrounding me, I saw it. A sleek, black limousine, its polished surface glinting in the afternoon light. The driver, a tall man in a dark suit, opened the door for me with a welcoming smile. "Miss Middleton?" he asked, his voice low and professional. I nodded, trying to hide the smile that crept onto my face. This was it. This was the moment I'd been waiting for. The moment when everything changed. I slid into the back seat of the limo, the soft leather seats enveloping me as I settled in. The interior smelled faintly of vanilla, and the soft hum of the engine was almost soothing. As the car pulled away from the station, I looked out the window at the streets of London, each one teeming with life, possibilities, and most importantly, freedom. Fiona was right, this wasn't just about arriving in London. It was about making a statement. It was about showing the world that I wasn't just the girl who was overlooked, who was given the bus ticket while her brother drove away in his shiny new car. I was someone who could take on the world. As we passed through the busy streets, the grandeur of the city slowly replaced the small-town familiarity of Bath. The towering buildings, the bustling crowds, the constant movement, it was all so overwhelming, yet so exhilarating. This was a world that demanded attention, and I was going to make sure I got mine. The limo driver took a sharp turn onto a quieter street, and before I knew it, we were pulling up in front of a sleek, modern building. The sign above the entrance read, "Langley Enterprises." Fiona's family business. She had mentioned it before, how she had inherited it from her father and had big plans for the future. But now, seeing the building in person, I realized just how big her world was compared to mine. The door opened, and Fiona herself stepped out to greet me, a wide smile on her face. She looked effortlessly glamorous, her dark hair flowing around her shoulders as she reached for my hand. "You made it," she said, her eyes sparkling with excitement. "I knew you would. Welcome to the big leagues." Her words hit me like a tidal wave of hope. This wasn't just a fresh start, it was the beginning of everything. The beginning of a life I could shape on my own terms, a life where I wasn't defined by my family's expectations or their favors to Oliver. "I don't know what to say," I replied, still trying to process the fact that I was standing in front of one of the most influential business empires in London, about to step into a world that was entirely unfamiliar, yet full of promise. "Don't say anything," Fiona laughed. "Just come inside. There's a lot we need to talk about." As we walked into the building, I felt a surge of determination. This was my chance, my opportunity. No more bus tickets. No more playing second fiddle to Oliver. I was ready to take what was mine. Fiona led me through the sleek, modern lobby, and we entered a high-rise elevator that took us up to the top floor. The view from here was breathtaking. London spread out before me like a vast sea of possibilities, and for the first time in my life, I felt like I belonged. The door opened to a spacious office, filled with glass walls that looked out over the city. The room was immaculate, decorated in shades of grey and silver, with an air of sophistication and power. It was everything I had imagined, and yet, I felt strangely at home. Fiona gestured for me to take a seat in one of the plush chairs, then poured us both a glass of water. As she sat down across from me, her smile faded just slightly, replaced by a more serious expression. "I've got an offer for you, Lily," she said, her voice steady. "Something that could change everything for both of us." I leaned forward, intrigued. Fiona had always been ambitious, always thinking several steps ahead. And now, I was about to be a part of her plan. The question was, what did she have in mind? Fiona sat across from me, her eyes intense, calculating as she studied my reaction. The weight of her words hung in the air, thick with anticipation. She wasn't one to speak without purpose, and this offer, whatever it was undoubtedly going to change the course of everything I thought I knew. "I've been thinking about this for a while, Lily," Fiona began, her voice steady, almost too calm. "You've always had more potential than anyone realized. You've been held back by your family, by their expectations, by their indifference. But you don't have to stay stuck in that." She paused, watching me closely, waiting for a response. My heart was racing, but I couldn't show it. I needed to stay calm, to understand what she was truly offering. "I want you to come work for me," she said, leaning forward slightly. "Not just as an assistant or some minor role. I'm offering you a chance to join Langley Enterprises at a much higher level. I want you to be my partner, Lily." The words hit me like a bolt of lightning. Partner. The idea of working alongside Fiona, building something together, was beyond anything I had ever dreamed of. But there was a catch, wasn't there? Nothing in this world came without one. I took a breath, trying to steady myself. "Why me? Why not someone else from your circle? There must be hundreds of people who would kill for that opportunity." Fiona smiled, but there was a sharpness in her gaze. "You've got something others don't. You've got fire, determination. You've spent your life being underestimated, Lily, but I see something in you that's different. You have the ability to rise above the ordinary and make a real impact. I need someone who can think outside the box, who can take risks and stand their ground when everything is falling apart." Her words struck deep, and for a moment, I almost believed them. The idea of stepping out from under my brother's shadow, of proving myself to the world, was intoxicating. But something in me hesitated. I knew Fiona wasn't the type to offer something without expecting something in return. "What's the catch?" I asked, my voice firm. Fiona didn't flinch. She simply leaned back in her chair, her eyes never leaving mine. "You'll have to prove yourself," she said slowly. "I don't give out opportunities like this to anyone. You'll have to show me that you have what it takes to succeed, that you're willing to put in the work, to push beyond your limits. And there's more. There are people in this company who won't like the idea of you being involved. Some won't accept a new face, especially someone who doesn't have the pedigree we usually look for. But I believe in you, Lily." I thought about the years I had spent feeling small, overshadowed by Oliver and the rest of my family. I had always played by their rules, never daring to step out of line. But now, I had the chance to carve my own path, to prove to myself and everyone else that I was more than what they had seen. "You really think I can do it?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Fiona nodded. "I know you can." Her confidence was contagious. For the first time in a long while, I felt a flicker of something powerful inside me, a sense of hope, of possibility. Maybe this was the opportunity one had been waiting for all my life. "I'll do it," I said, the words coming out stronger than I had expected. "I'm in. I'll prove to you that I can handle it." Fiona's smile widened, and I saw a glint of something, satisfaction, perhaps, or approval. Whatever it was enough to make me feel like I had just made the most important decision of my life. "I knew you'd say that," she said, standing up and extending her hand. "Welcome to Langley Enterprises, Lily. Get ready to change everything." I shook her hand firmly, a sense of resolve settling over me. This wasn't just a job. It wasn't just a partnership. This was my chance to make my own way, to show the world that I was more than the girl with the bus ticket. I had a future ahead of me, and I was going to take it. As we left the office, Fiona led me through the halls of Langley Enterprises, introducing me to people who seemed to float through the corridors with a sense of purpose and power. The building itself felt alive with energy, and for the first time in my life, I didn't feel out of place. Fiona's world was now mine, and I was ready to take my place in it. But as I walked beside her, I couldn't shake the feeling that I had just stepped into something far bigger than I had anticipated. There were risks involved, and not everyone would be on my side. But one thing was certain, I wasn't going to back down now. The following days at Langley Enterprises were a whirlwind. Fiona kept her promise, guiding me through the world of high-stakes business with a sharp focus. I learned quickly that this was not a place for second chances. Everyone had a role to play, and only the strong survived. Every move I made, every decision I took, was scrutinized, dissected, and judged. But there was something about the challenge that sparked a fire in me. The more pressure Fiona put on me, the more determined I became. I could feel myself transforming, slowly but surely, into someone I had never been before, someone unafraid to take risks, to make decisions that could shape my future. It was during one of these intense days that Fiona set me up for my first real test. We were sitting in her office when she placed a sleek file on the table in front of me. "I want you to close this deal, Lily," she said, her voice steady. "It's a partnership with a tech firm we've been eyeing for months. We've got a chance to secure a major contract, but it's not going to be easy. They play hardball. They're not going to make it easy for us to get what we want." I nodded, trying to keep my composure. "I understand." "Do you?" Fiona raised an eyebrow. "This isn't a simple negotiation. It's not about winning them over with charm or flattery. This is about power. Who has it, who doesn't? Who is willing to fight for it, and who will back down?" Her words hung in the air, and I could feel the weight of the task she was setting in front of me. Fiona was testing me, she wanted to see if I could handle the pressure. She wasn't just giving me a project, she was pushing me to prove my worth. The day of the meeting arrived, and the tension in the air was palpable. I stood outside the conference room, the sleek, polished door reflecting my nervous face. My heart pounded in my chest as I adjusted my blazer and took a deep breath. This was it. This was my chance to show Fiona that I was ready, that I belonged here. Inside the room, the tech firm's representatives were already seated. They were a group of sharp-suited men and women, their faces cool and unreadable. I could feel their eyes on me as I entered the room, and I held my head high, refusing to let the nerves show. "Miss Middleton," one of them said, nodding at me. "I trust we're here for the same reason." I smiled and took a seat, feeling the weight of their expectations on me. "Yes, Mr. Harris. We're here to discuss how Langley Enterprises can work with your company." The negotiations started slowly, with pleasantries and small talk. But as the conversation progressed, I could feel the power dynamics shifting. The more they tried to push us, the more I pushed back, keeping my voice steady, calm, and assertive. This wasn't just a negotiation, it was a battle, and I was determined to win. The meeting went on for hours, but I didn't back down. I held my ground, presented my arguments, and made it clear that Langley Enterprises wasn't going to be intimidated. Slowly, the tech representatives began to soften, their stances becoming less rigid, their expressions more open. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, we reached a deal that was far better than we had anticipated. As I stood up to shake hands with Mr. Harris, I couldn't help but feel a surge of triumph. I had done it. I had closed the deal. When I returned to Fiona's office, she was waiting for me, her gaze piercing as she looked me over. "Well," she asked, her tone neutral. I took a deep breath. "We did it. We secured the contract. The deal is signed. Fiona didn't smile, but there was a flicker of approval in her eyes. Good, she said, standing up and walking toward me. You've passed your first test, Lily. But don't get too comfortable. This is just the beginning. You've got a lot more to prove before I can trust you completely. I nodded, my heart racing with a mixture of excitement and fear. Fiona had just given me a taste of the power I could have, but she wasn't going to make it easy for me. There was more to this than just closing deals and impressing her. I had to prove myself every single day. As I left her office, I couldn't help but feel a sense of satisfaction. I had earned her approval, at least for now. But I also knew that Fiona's world wasn't one where you could rest on your laurels. There would always be another challenge, another test waiting just around the corner. And I was ready for it. As the weeks passed, my position at Langley Enterprises became more secure, but with it came more pressure. Fiona continued to push me, testing my abilities, forcing me to adapt to the fast-paced world of high-stakes business. But what I hadn't anticipated was how quickly the stakes would rise. It all started with a new project that Fiona handed me, a major acquisition that could change the course of Langley Enterprises. We were eyeing a smaller company in the tech industry, one that had been steadily growing and had caught the attention of investors. If we secured this acquisition, Langley Enterprises would have a monopoly in a new sector, and the company's stock would soar. This is bigger than anything you've done so far, Fiona said one afternoon, as she placed a stack of files in front of me. But you're ready. I believe you can handle it. The weight of her words settled over me like a heavy cloak. I had proved myself before, but this was different. This wasn't just about closing deals or winning contracts. This was a power play. If I succeeded, Fiona would trust me with even greater responsibilities. If I failed, I didn't want to think about that. I dove into the task with everything I had. The company we were trying to acquire was in negotiations with several other potential buyers, all of them eager to make a bid. It was a delicate process, one wrong move, and we could lose the deal to a competitor. I spent countless hours researching the company, understanding their operations, their weaknesses, and their financial health. I met with the company's executives, carefully listening to their concerns and negotiating terms that would work for both sides. Fiona watched from the sidelines, offering advice and guidance, but it was clear that this was my test. The pressure mounted as the deadline approached. Every decision I made felt like it carried the weight of the company on my shoulders. I couldn't afford to make a mistake. I needed to secure this acquisition, not just for Fiona, but for myself. Then came the moment of truth. We were in the final meeting with the company's board of directors, sitting around a large conference table in a sleek, glass-walled office. The tension was thick. The other buyers were there, too, and their representatives looked confident, poised, and ready to seal the deal. I couldn't afford to show any signs of weakness. I had to play this game as if my life depended on it. As the meeting progressed, it became clear that the competition was fierce. The other buyers had made attractive offers, ones that seemed almost too good to pass up. But I wasn't ready to give up just yet. I had one final move up my sleeve, an offer that no one else had thought of, one that would secure the deal for Langley Enterprises and push the competitors out of the running. I made my pitch, calmly and confidently, laying out the terms of our offer. It was bold, unconventional, but it made sense. I could see the other buyers shifting in their seats, their confident expressions faltering as they realized they were up against something unexpected. When I finished, the room fell silent. The board members exchanged glances, and I held my breath, waiting for their decision. Finally, the head of the board looked at me and nodded. "Your offer is compelling. We'll take it." The words hit me like a rush of adrenaline. We had done it. The acquisition was ours. I sat back in my chair, feeling the weight of the victory settle in. I had pulled off the impossible. Not only had I secured the acquisition, but I had done it in a way that no one expected. Fiona had been right to put her trust in me. Later that evening, Fiona called me into her office. She didn't waste any time with pleasantries. "You did well, Lily," she said, her voice cool but approving. "That was a bold move. A smart one. I'm impressed." I couldn't help but smile. "Thank you. I couldn't have done it without your guidance." Fiona nodded. "Just remember, this game isn't over. You've earned this, but you have to keep proving yourself. Power is a fickle thing, and those who hold it are constantly tested." I nodded, my heart racing with a mixture of excitement and anticipation. Fiona's approval was a victory in itself, but I knew it wasn't the end. The real battle was just beginning. As I left her office that night, I felt a sense of pride. I had taken a huge step forward. But I also knew that Fiona was right. This was just the beginning. The game was only going to get harder, and if I wanted to stay on top, I had to be ready for whatever came next. Days turned into weeks, and the victory over the acquisition started to feel like just another step in the endless climb. But something within me shifted. The power, the control, it all began to settle into me like a second skin. I was no longer the underdog, the quiet observer in the background. I was now one of the key players, and I could feel the subtle changes in the way people treated me. Fiona had placed me in charge of more projects, each one more complicated than the last. She trusted me, but at the same time, I knew she was watching, waiting for me to slip up. I had to stay sharp, always on guard, because in the world I now inhabited, one mistake could ruin everything. But it wasn't just Fiona I had to be wary of. The more I moved up, the more I realized there were others watching me, calculating their own moves. There were whispers in the halls, subtle looks exchanged behind closed doors. I wasn't the only one who had ambitions. Langley Enterprises was full of ambitious people, and some of them weren't content with just playing by the rules. They were willing to do whatever it took to win. I started to notice these people, those who operated in the shadows. Their smiles were too sharp, their words too smooth. They were the ones who could easily manipulate situations, twist things to their advantage. I wasn't naive enough to believe that I could rise without encountering them. I had expected competition, but I hadn't anticipated this level of deceit. One afternoon, I found myself in a meeting with one of them, Graham Middleton. He was Fiona's right-hand man, but I had always suspected there was something more to him. He had an air of charm, but there was an underlying coldness in his eyes, a certain calculation that made my skin crawl. "You've been doing well, Lily," Graham said, his tone smooth as silk. "Fiona's been impressed with your work. But don't get too comfortable. The higher you climb, the more enemies you make." I forced a smile, trying to remain composed. "I'm not worried about enemies, Graham. I'm focused on doing my job." He chuckled, leaning back in his chair. "That's what they all say. But let me give you some advice, watch your back. Everyone here has a price. Even Fiona." The words hung in the air, heavy with meaning. I tried to brush them off, but the seed of doubt had been planted. I had always trusted Fiona, but now I wasn't so sure. Could I trust anyone in this world? As the days went on, I found myself questioning everything. Fiona's intentions, Graham's warnings, even my own motives. The deeper I went into this world of power and business, the more I realized that no one was truly innocent. Everyone had their own agenda. Everyone was playing a game. One night, after a particularly exhausting day, I found myself alone in the office, staring out over the city. The lights twinkled below, a sea of gold and white stretching endlessly into the horizon. I thought about all the people I had met along the way, the ones who had helped me, the ones who had tried to use me, and those who had failed to notice me altogether. I had come so far, but was I really in control? Or was I just another pawn in a much larger game? The answer wasn't clear, but I knew one thing for certain: I couldn't afford to let my guard down. I had to keep playing, keep pushing forward. If I stopped, even for a moment, the game would move on without me, and I would be left behind. The game of power was like a delicate dance, one wrong step, and it could all come crashing down. The next morning, Fiona summoned me to her office. Her expression was unreadable, and I could sense the tension in the air as soon as I walked in. "I need you to handle something for me," she said, her voice low and serious. "There's a potential merger on the table, but there are some issues that need to be ironed out first. I want you to take the lead on this. Show me you can handle it." I nodded, though my mind was racing. Was this another test? Or was it something more? There was something about Fiona's tone that felt off, something I couldn't quite put my finger on. But I didn't have time to dwell on it. I had a job to do. As I left her office, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was about to happen, something big, something that would change everything. I had no idea what lay ahead, but I knew I was in too deep to back out now. The next few days were a whirlwind. The merger Fiona had entrusted me with was becoming more complex by the hour. As I delved deeper into the financials, the projections, and the strategic plans, something began to feel off. Numbers didn't add up, key players were being excluded from crucial meetings, and I was beginning to feel as though I was stepping into a game far larger than I had anticipated. Late one night, after hours of poring over documents, I stumbled upon a discrepancy. A small, almost insignificant detail, buried beneath layers of reports. It was a line item under the merger's projected expenses, nothing major, but enough to raise questions. Someone had been diverting funds. The sum was too large to ignore, yet no one had mentioned it in the meetings. I knew I couldn't confront Fiona about it yet. I had to dig deeper. The truth was out there, and it was only a matter of time before I uncovered it. The following morning, I made a call to Graham. His earlier warning about Fiona kept echoing in my mind. Could she really be involved in something so deceitful? Or was someone else pulling the strings? Graham answered after the second ring. "Lily, what's on your mind?" His voice was calm, too calm, and I could hear the faintest hint of amusement. "I need your help," I said, keeping my tone steady. "There's something off about this merger. It's not adding up. I need to know who's been involved in the financials." There was a pause on the other end, and then a slow chuckle. "You've been digging, haven't you? I knew you'd get there eventually." I frowned, my suspicion growing. "What do you mean?" "Let's just say, you're asking the right questions. But you might not like the answers," he said cryptically. "There's more going on here than you think. Fiona's not as innocent as she looks." The words hung in the air like a dark cloud. My heart skipped a beat. I had suspected that Fiona might be involved in something shady, but the confirmation from Graham felt like a punch to the gut. "Graham, what do you know?" I pressed. "I can't tell you everything," he replied, his voice dropping to a whisper. "But I will tell you this, someone is going to get burned, and it might just be you." I didn't know whether to be scared or enraged. But one thing was clear, this wasn't just about the merger. There was a bigger game at play, and I was smack in the middle of it. That afternoon, I received an unexpected visitor, Fiona herself. She appeared at my office door, her expression unreadable. It wasn't like her to come by unannounced. Something was off, and I could feel the tension in the air as soon as she stepped inside. "I've been hearing things," Fiona said, her voice cold. "There's talk that you're questioning the merger." "I thought we were beyond that, Lily. You've been doing so well, and now this." I stood my ground, despite the knot tightening in my stomach. "I'm just doing my job, Fiona. I'm making sure everything adds up. And right now, it doesn't." Her eyes narrowed, her lips tightening into a thin line. "You're treading dangerous ground, Lily. I told you before that trust is everything here. If you want to make it, you need to stop digging." I stared at her, trying to read her, but her gaze was impenetrable. I had a feeling she was hiding something big, and she was trying to intimidate me into dropping it. But I wasn't going to back down. I couldn't. As she turned to leave, I spoke, my voice steady but firm. I'm not going to stop, Fiona. I'll find out the truth, no matter what. Her eyes flicked back to me, a glimmer of something dark flickering there before she stepped out without another word. I wasn't sure whether her warning was a threat or an attempt to manipulate me, but I knew one thing for sure, I was getting closer to the truth. I spent the next few days uncovering more secrets. The deeper I dug, the darker it became. Fiona wasn't the only one involved. It seemed that several high-ranking individuals at Langley Enterprises were playing their own game, hiding behind layers of deceit. The merger wasn't just about business, it was about control, power, and money. And I was caught in the middle of it all. By the time I confronted Fiona again, I had everything I needed to expose the truth. The papers were stacked in front of me like evidence in a criminal case, each one a piece of the puzzle I had been trying to put together. She stood in front of me, her face pale, but she didn't flinch when I pushed the papers toward her. I know everything, Fiona, I said, my voice low but unwavering. The funds have been diverted, the accounts have been altered, and you're at the center of it all. Her expression didn't change. She didn't look surprised, she didn't look scared, she simply looked disappointed. You think you've won, Lily, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. This is just the beginning. You have no idea what you're up against. I felt a chill crawl up my spine. There was something in her tone, something final, as though she knew I had just stepped into a world where I couldn't turn back. I'm not backing down, I said, my resolve hardening. The truth will come out. She smiled, a cold, empty smile. We'll see about that. And with that, she turned and left. I sat there, staring at the papers in front of me. I had uncovered the truth, but I knew that the battle was far from over. Fiona wasn't going to go down easily, and neither were the others involved in this twisted game. But I wasn't afraid. I had come this far, and there was no turning back now. The weeks that followed were filled with tension. Fiona had disappeared from the office, leaving me to handle the fallout of the exposed financial discrepancies. But despite the chaos swirling around me, I knew the truth was still out there, waiting to be fully uncovered. I had pieced together enough to know that the lies didn't end with Fiona. There were bigger forces at play, and I was about to face them head-on. It was a crisp Thursday morning when I received a mysterious email. No subject, just a short, simple message: meet me at the old warehouse by the docks at 3 p.m. I have something you need to see. The sender was anonymous. No name, no clue as to who it could be. But deep down, I knew. I couldn't ignore it. This was the moment. I was about to confront whatever darkness was lurking behind Fiona and the others. At 2:45 p.m., I found myself standing in front of a large, dilapidated warehouse. The kind of place you wouldn't expect anyone to meet you, let alone reveal secrets. My heart raced, and I glanced around cautiously before pushing open the rusted door. Inside, it was eerily quiet, the only sound being the echo of my footsteps. I walked further in, the stale air thick with dust and forgotten memories. And then, standing at the far end of the warehouse, I saw him. Graham. I froze for a moment, unsure of whether to approach. I hadn't seen him since our conversation on the phone, and his sudden appearance here was unsettling. What was he doing here? And why now? Lily, he said, his voice low and calm as always. I figured you'd be the one to show up. I took a step forward, my mind racing. What's going on, Graham? What is all of this? He didn't answer right away. Instead, he stepped aside, revealing a desk covered in files, documents, and what looked like a stack of money. The money that had been diverted from the merger. This, he said, pointing to the stack of bills, is the truth you've been chasing. This is where it all leads. I walked toward the desk, my heart sinking as I recognized some of the paperwork. It was the same financial documents I had uncovered, but now there was a tangible proof of the corruption that ran through the company's veins. You and Fiona were never the only players in this game, Graham continued. The merger was just a smokescreen. A way to cover up what was really going on behind the scenes. I felt a chill wash over me. So, it wasn't just Fiona. No, he replied, shaking his head slowly. It's bigger than that. A network of people pulling the strings. Fiona's just a part of it. I stared at the money on the desk, my mind spinning with the implications. Why are you telling me this, Graham? If you're involved in all of this, then why help me? Graham's expression remained unreadable, but there was a flicker of something, regret, perhaps. I've been in too deep, Lily. I got involved to make sure Fiona succeeded, but I didn't expect it to get this far. Now I'm just trying to clean up the mess. Clean up the mess? I repeated, my voice rising in disbelief. You've been part of the mess all along, Graham. You've been lying, covering up, and now you want to make it right. You can't just walk away from this. I don't have a choice, he said, his voice hardening. I'm out now. Fiona's done. But this is bigger than her. If you go public with this, you'll be taking down some very dangerous people. You don't know who's involved. I took a step back, feeling the weight of his words sink in. You want me to just walk away, don't you? To leave this all behind? He didn't answer immediately. Instead, he stepped closer, his voice low. I want you to think about what comes next. If you expose this, there's no going back, Lily. Your career, your life, it will all change. Are you ready for that? I stared at him, my mind a storm of thoughts and emotions. The truth was right in front of me. I could expose it all, bring down Fiona and everyone who was complicit in this corruption. But at what cost? Was I truly ready to take on an entire network of powerful people? Could I handle the consequences? For a long moment, the room was silent. Then, I made my decision. I'm not walking away, I said, my voice steady. I'm going to expose everything. The world needs to know the truth. Graham's eyes darkened, but he didn't stop me. Instead, he nodded slowly. Then you better be prepared, Lily. Once this gets out, there's no turning back. I turned on my heel and walked out of the warehouse, the weight of my decision pressing down on me. As I stepped into the cold night air, I knew that everything had changed. I wasn't just a businesswoman anymore. I was a whistleblower, a force for justice. And nothing was going to stop me now.